So this is a follow-up to a video I did talking about kids and sex, and I feel as if I would be remiss unless I talked about one of the most positive areas in my life where I was able to uh, talk about, think about, experience sex and sexuality as a young person, and that is the Louisville Youth Group. I was a part of the Louisville Youth Group from I guess about the summer of my coming out, which was between junior and senior year in high school. And what had happened was, um, through friends of friends of friends of friends, kids find ways to talk about and think about sex. And so I don't even remember how I found this youth group. But basically, what they did was um, they had a safe space for gay and lesbian, for queer, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender youth in the Louisville, Kentuckiana, area to basically to come into this youth group, and what would they do? They would talk to us about safer sex. They would talk to us about coming out. They would talk to us about being gay in the workplace. Talk to us about being gay in conservative families. Essentially, what they were doing was teaching self love through modeling self love. Um, they never encouraged us to have sex. As a matter of fact, the group wasn't about sex. It was about identity. And I think a lot of people, you know, who fear sex, who fear sexuality, their own, they confuse the two. So if you say, you're talking to a kid about homosexuality or a gay group, you're thinking, oh my God, what are they doing with it? What are they talking about? Well, nothing more than, teaching kids about being black in a white supremacist world. Essentially, that's what it is teaching kids how to externalize hatred and not internalize hatred. The hatred that people direct towards them, they would say to us, well, look, people are uncomfortable with this, but you're okay. I'm okay, you're okay. It sounds pretty simple, but looking at how much people internalize hatred, for example, I'm sitting here. This used to be cotton field. This is my grandmother grew up, and Alabama Power coerced people into selling the land so that they can make a water reservoir, and it's great because we get fish from there and everything, um, but land is eroding. You don't believe me? Look, I'll show you. Can you see? Look at the trees. Look at that line. I'll show you some more. It's really eroding. Um, I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, my point is not that the land is eroding, but my point is that everybody around here who's black, woman, they have a hair weave. You go to India, people are lightening their skin, and people with damn near straight hair or even straightening their hair. People hate not being white. And white people might be thinking, well, white is not all that great either. And I understand that there is classism amongst white people, that there is sexism amongst white people, but I do have to say that white skin privilege um, provides a great amount of insulation. It isn't to say that white people don't feel pain, and it isn't even to compare hatreds and pains, because I honestly believe that everybody feels these things with equal severity. But this is to say that there's something very specific about the kinds of hatred that we are taught that says you shouldn't love yourself. You should think that everything about you is dirty. The way you look, the way you act, the way you talk, the way just your body is. Your nappy hair, your wide nose, your fat African ass. All of this stuff is ugly. And the same thing for, gay people. Don't act like a sissy. Don't do this, don't blah, blah, blah. If you're a butch, all these things that teach you that you should hate yourself and reject yourself. There are groups that work against that. And I had the great fortune. What is this? Okay. Um, Banking stuff. But it teaches us when we make the concerted effort to teach people to love themselves. What comes of that is revolutionary. So just to sit down in such a group and listen to young people. Listening, I remember that there were kids in that group who, Southern Baptist ministers' kids, they had been put out of their house. People who were talking about love and preaching love on Sundays, they totally rejected their children. They hated them, as a matter of fact. Put them at 16 years old, put them out on the street. That's hate. Christians did that. Christian ministers did that stuff. And to see the black Christians in my city to stand up for what against the hate crimes ordinances in my city. This is the kind of hate that I was taught growing up in Louisville, Kentucky. But then I had such a youth group that stood against that. I know Gilbert Hurd and Andrew Boxer, they've written extensively about this in a book called Children of the Horizons, about a gay youth group in Chicago. Now, granted, the whiteness is itself unquestioned, is assumed as a base category, and everybody else is different, the other. But what that book does teach us is that there is a pathway, taking off of what Bell Hooks writes a lot about, that there is a pathway. There are many pathways towards self-love, but you really have to embark on something. You can't just watch television and expect to get it. You can't just go to the mall and buy something and feel good. You have to actually make efforts to say, wait a minute now. I want to love myself. I'm okay. I mean, as simple as looking in the mirror. I know you guys have, heard these things that might sound like bullshit, but look in the mirror and say, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm beautiful. I'm smart. I'm lovely. That kind of thing. But it goes a long way, because until you do that, you don't even recognize how much hatred we hear and see in our environments. I know it sounds silly to some people who have thought about this a lot, but you know what it's like. I mean, think about how many times you've encountered, particularly people with certain kinds of privilege, be it white skin privilege or class privilege or any combination of the two, gender privilege, and they don't understand why we're always talking about self love, why we have it so hard. They have no clue, and it probably sounds mundane and silly to them. Or talk about people who grew up as majorities in other places. My own father comes from Nigeria, and he had to learn about racism intimately when he came to America, and it was very different from what he had growing up as a majority person, where everyone looked like him, sounded like him. There was a great amount of ethnic diversity, including the Civil War. But this idea of the fundamental basis of who you are, just who you are, something that is inalienable and unchangeable, is hated. And that is the kind of thing that people in this environment are facing, and that is the kind of thing that I had the great fortune of being exposed to at a young age, this path of self-love through Buddhism as well. And so I take it upon myself to talk to tell, people with nappy natural hair, I love your hair. I do. I mean, I actually see people's hair and I'm like, I really like your hair. And I'm sorry, I don't want to be mean, but I don't really have much to say to, I can recognize that people with perms and weaves and wigs and stuff have nice hair. And I'll tell them that too. But when somebody's got this stuff going on here, shoot, I'm like, damn, that's the bomb. That's the BOMB. Um, and I've heard, from other black women of how important it is for us to reinforce these ideas. And I know that, there are men who treat them like crap once they decide to so-called go natural. Um, just as much as there are people who treat me like crap just because I choose not to be ashamed of who I am, any part of who I am. It's out there. It really is out there. And unless we are vigilant, unless we are saying to each other and reminding each other, and especially our young people, then that is all they have to go on. And we cannot let that madness, not even the Beyoncés, be all that they have to go on. If you're not gonna put a ring on it.